The huge crystal building that held the Galactic Council was full of noise and worry today. Every alien species in the galaxy had come to this meeting because they all wanted something very important from the humans. The building stretched up so high that small ships could fly between its towers, and the main meeting hall was so big that it could hold 1,000,000 beings at once. Ambassador Hyunwoo walked slowly to the human speaking area. His black suit was perfect, and his face showed no feelings at all. Behind him walked his team of smart humans. Bora carried a small device that could translate any language in the galaxy, and Minho had a briefcase full of papers that would change everything. The other humans in the group all looked calm, but anyone who knew humans well could see they were very angry. The aliens in the Great Hall were making lots of noise. The Vorthak bugs were clicking their mouthparts together and their wings were buzzing with worry. The tall blue aquatic people were making bubble sounds and their skin was changing colors. The rock people called crystalline were humming in voices that sounded like music, but today their song sounded scared. For many months now, all these alien species had been asking humans to share their amazing technology. The humans had invented a way to talk to anyone in the galaxy instantly, even if they were on the other side of space. This technology was so good that messages could travel faster than the fastest spaceships and never get lost or broken. The aliens wanted this technology very badly. The Vorthak Prime Minister was a huge bug creature with 6 arms and eyes that could see in all directions. He flew his floating chair closer to where Hyunwoo was standing. The bug leader had been the loudest voice demanding that humans share their communication machines. He believed that all technology should belong to everyone in the galaxy, not just the species that invented it. Other alien leaders had joined the Vorthak in putting pressure on humans. The serpent people called Dreknari had threatened to stop all trade with human worlds. Their leader was a giant snake with golden scales who could hypnotize people with her eyes. She had said that humans were being selfish and greedy by keeping their inventions to themselves. The ghost-like luminous beings had also been complaining. They were made of pure energy and could pass through walls and fly through space without ships. They thought that since they shared their energy technology with everyone, humans should do the same with their communication devices. Their voices sounded like wind chimes when they spoke, and today they sounded very upset. Even the peaceful desert nomads had started to complain. These aliens looked like tall, thin people covered in sand-colored fur. They lived on planets that were all desert, and they were usually very quiet and polite. But lately they had been sending messages saying that humans were not being good galactic citizens. The pressure had been building for months. Some alien species had stopped buying human products. Others had refused to let human ships land on their planets. A few had even threatened to attack human colonies if the humans did not give up their communication technology. The Galactic Council had voted 3 times to force humans to share their inventions, but today everything was going to change. Hyunwoo stepped up to the speaking platform. The entire hall became quiet so fast that you could hear the air moving through the ventilation systems. His voice was calm and clear when he spoke, but his words hit the aliens like a bomb explosion. He said that humans were done with the Galactic Council Earth, and all human colonies were leaving the galactic community forever. There would be no more meetings, no more trade deals, no more sharing of any kind. The humans were going to close their borders, and no alien ships would be allowed in human space. The reaction was immediate and terrible. The Vorthak Prime Minister started clicking so fast that his mouthparts began to smoke. The Dreknari leader hissed so loudly that several smaller aliens covered their ears and ran away. The luminous beings flickered like broken lights and started making sounds like screaming wind, but the humans did not react to any of this chaos. Hyunwoo kept talking in his calm voice. He said that for too long the aliens had treated humans like children who should give away their toys. When asked, he said that humans had tried to be good neighbors, but the aliens had responded with threats and demands. Bora stepped forward and activated her translation device. She announced that all human technology would be removed from alien worlds. Within 30 days, all human doctors and teachers and engineers would return to human space. All trade agreements were canceled immediately. All military cooperation was over. Minho opened his briefcase and took out a long list of everything that would change. Human-built hospitals on alien worlds would close, human-made power plants would shut down. Human-designed spaceships would stop working because humans would no longer provide repair parts. The aliens began to realize how much they had depended on human help without even knowing it. The medicine that kept millions of aliens healthy was made by humans. The power systems that lit up entire cities were designed by human engineers. The computer systems that ran alien governments had human programming. The Crystalline Federation leader tried to speak. His voice sounded like a church bell, but it was shaking with fear. He asked if there was any way to fix this problem. He offered to give humans entire star systems, if they would stay in the galactic community. Hyunwoo looked at the rock being with eyes that showed no mercy. He said that the time for bargaining was over. The aliens had made their choice when they decided to threaten and demand instead of asking politely. Now they would have to live with the results. The aquatic collective representative started making the bubble sounds that meant extreme distress. Her skin turned dark blue, which showed that she was terrified. She asked what would happen to the peace treaties that prevented wars between different species. Minho answered that question. He said humans had been preventing wars for decades by carefully managing trade and resources. Without human involvement, the aliens would have to learn to solve their own problems. They would have to grow up and act like adults instead of children fighting over toys. As the human delegation prepared to leave the hall, many aliens tried to block their way. The snake people threatened to use their hypnotic powers. The energy beings flickered menacingly. Some of the smaller species started crying and begging, but nothing worked. The humans walked through the crowd like it was not even there. Their faces showed no anger, no sadness, no fear, just the cold determination of people who had made a final decision. When they reached the exit, Hyunwoo turned around one last time. He told the assembled aliens that humans would be watching from their own space. If any alien ship tried to enter human territory, it would be sent away. If any alien tried to attack human worlds, they would discover just how advanced human technology really was. Then the humans were gone. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The most helpful and advanced species in the galaxy had just walked away, and no one knew how to bring them back. 3 months had passed since the humans walked away from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was falling apart faster than anyone could have imagined. On the massive trading world called Nexus Prime, which was like a giant marketplace floating in space, Sujin sat in her office watching numbers on her computer screen that told a story of complete disaster. Sujin was the head of the Human Commercial Authority, and her job had been to manage all the trade between humans and aliens. But now there was nothing to manage because humans had stopped selling everything to the alien worlds. The numbers on her screen showed that 17 different alien species were running out of medicine that only humans knew how to make. The Vorthak Empire was in the worst trouble. Their bug soldiers were getting sick from a disease that only human medicine could cure. Without the special shots that human doctors had been giving them, millions of Vorthak bugs were going to die. The Empire had sent hundreds of messages begging for help, but every message disappeared into the silence that surrounded all human worlds. The tall blue aquatic people were facing a different problem. Their underwater cities needed special machines to clean the water and make it safe to breathe. These machines were built by humans and they were breaking down one by one. Without human engineers to fix them, entire cities would become poisonous and millions of water-breathing aliens would have to abandon their homes. Sujin looked at reports from other trading stations across the galaxy. The desert nomads had always lived on planets that were too hot and dry for most life forms. Human technology had helped them build machines that could pull water out of the air and create cool underground cities. Now those machines were failing, and the desert people were being forced back into their old nomadic lifestyle. The energy beings called Lumenis had a problem that was even more serious. They fed on a special type of radiation that only human power plants could produce. The aliens had built their entire civilization around these power sources, and now they were slowly starving as the human-built generators shut down one by one. But the medicine and machines were just the beginning of the disaster. The real problem was much bigger and scarier than anyone had realized. Jin Woo worked as an economic scientist on Earth, and he spent his days studying how money and trade worked across the galaxy. His latest report would have shocked the alien leaders if they could have read it. The report showed that humans controlled almost half of all the advanced manufacturing in their part of space. For years, the aliens had thought of humans as newcomers to galactic civilization. They believed that humans should be grateful to be included in the great community of spacefaring species. But the truth was that human factories and workshops had been making most of the important things that kept alien worlds running. Human-built computers ran the governments of dozens of alien worlds. Human-designed spaceships carried cargo between star systems. Human-created software managed everything from traffic control on busy planets to life support systems on space stations. The aliens had become completely dependent on human technology without even realizing it. On the military side of things, the situation was even worse. Fleet Admiral Wu Jin reviewed intelligence reports from the border regions of space where different species met. Several wars had started in just the past month because humans were no longer there to keep the peace. The Draknari snake people had always been aggressive, but human diplomats had kept them from attacking their neighbors. Now, without human peacekeepers to stop them, the Draknari had invaded 3 different star systems. The crystalline rock people were fighting back, but their weapons were old and not very effective. The Hive Collective, which was made up of millions of insect-like creatures working together as one mind, had started expanding into neutral space. They claimed they needed more resources because human technology was no longer available to help them use their existing resources efficiently. What made all these conflicts worse was that the alien weapons and spaceships had been designed with human help. Human engineers had made sure that different species could work together and that no one group became too powerful. But now, without human maintenance and upgrades, the military balance was falling apart. The most frightening part of the whole situation was the complete silence from human space. Every day, alien leaders sent desperate messages to human worlds, begging for help, pleading for forgiveness, offering huge payments for even basic supplies. But it was like shouting into empty space. Nothing came back, not even an acknowledgement that the messages had been received. Some alien species had tried to send spies into human territory to find out what was happening. But every ship that got close to human space simply vanished. The ships were not destroyed and no wreckage was found. They just disappeared as if they had never existed at all. Communication satellites that had been jointly operated by humans and aliens went dark one by one. The aliens discovered that humans had built secret systems into all the shared technology systems that could shut everything down with the push of a button. The galaxy-wide internet that connected billions of beings across thousands of worlds was breaking apart as human-built components stopped working on the Galactic Council station itself. The situation was becoming desperate. The massive space station had been built with human engineering and human power systems. Now the lights were getting dimmer every day and the air recycling systems were starting to fail. The station that had been the symbol of galactic unity was slowly dying. The alien leaders who had demanded human technology were now faced with a terrible truth. They could not build any of it themselves. The fusion reactors that powered their cities used physics that alien scientists barely understood. The medical equipment that saved millions of lives every year was based on biological knowledge that was far beyond alien science. Even worse, when alien engineers tried to copy human devices, they failed completely. The human technology was not just advanced, it was built on scientific principles that the aliens had never discovered. Every human invention depended on dozens of other human discoveries, and without understanding the basic science behind it all, the aliens could not make anything work. The Vorthak Prime Minister, who had been the loudest voice demanding human technology, was now facing the collapse of his entire empire. His clicking mandibles had worn down from constant nervous grinding, and his once proud wings hung limp with despair. The council called emergency meeting after emergency meeting, but without humans to provide structure and guidance, the meetings turned into shouting matches. Different species blamed each other for the crisis. Everyone had ideas about how to fix things, but no one had the knowledge or ability to actually do anything. As the months passed, it became clear that the galaxy had been held together by human competence and human generosity. The aliens had mistaken human helpfulness for weakness and human sharing for obligation. Now they were learning that Humans had been the foundation that everything else was built on. The age of easy living was over. The aliens would have to learn to survive on their own, or they would not survive at all. 6 months had passed since humans disappeared from galactic society, and the panic had spread to every corner of known space. On the council station, which was now running on emergency power because the human-built generators were failing, Chief Diplomat Ye-Jin watched through secret communication channels as the alien species began attacking each other like wild animals. Ye-Jin had been stationed on the council station as a human observer for years, but now she was trapped there because all human ships had been recalled to human space. She watched the aliens fight and argue and blame each other for problems they had created by demanding too much from humanity. Her reports back to Earth painted a picture of complete civilizational breakdown. The Draknari Empire had become completely crazy without human energy technology to power their worlds. Their snake-like leaders were so desperate for power sources that they had started strip mining entire planets, destroying the environments of 3 different species. The beautiful crystal forests of the Lumini's homeworld were being torn apart by Draknari mining machines. The rock people called the Crystalline Federation were fighting back, but their weapons were old and primitive compared to what they had been using when humans helped them maintain their military. The war between the snakes and the rocks was spreading to other star systems, as both sides tried to grab resources that humans used to help them share peacefully. But the worst disaster was happening with the Hive Collective. These insect creatures had always been somewhat dangerous, but human diplomats had kept them focused on peaceful activities. Now, without human guidance, the Hive had decided that the only way to survive was to take over other people's planets by force. Intelligence operative Sung Min worked from a secret listening post hidden in an asteroid field between 2 war zones. His job was to monitor alien communications, and what he discovered was both hilarious and terrifying. The aliens were trying desperately to copy human technology, but they were failing in ways that were almost funny if they were not so dangerous. The Vorthak bugs had built crude copies of human medical equipment, but they did not understand how the medicine worked. Their homemade drugs were making their own people sicker instead of better. 3 different Vorthak colonies had been wiped out by diseases that their fake human medicine had made worse. The aquatic people had tried to rebuild human-designed water purification systems, but they had gotten the chemistry completely wrong. Instead of cleaning their water, they had created a poisonous soup that was killing fish and plants across dozens of ocean worlds. The blue-skinned water breathers were being forced to evacuate their oldest cities. Even more pathetic were the attempts by alien scientists to understand human-powered technology. The desert nomads had managed to take apart one of the human fusion reactors, but when they tried to put it back together, it had exploded and destroyed half of their main city. The explosion was so big it could be seen from space. The aliens were learning that human technology was not just advanced, it was impossibly complex. Every human device they examined revealed layers of science and engineering that were centuries ahead of anything the aliens had developed. The fusion reactors were not just power sources, they were masterpieces of physics that used principles the aliens did not even have names for. Sung Min intercepted communications between alien scientists that showed just how hopeless their situation was. The medical supplies were not just effective treatments, they were based on an understanding of how living bodies worked that was so advanced it might as well have been magic to the aliens. The Galactic Council security chief was a many-armed creature called Sever, who had always been suspicious of human motives, but now he was sending message after message into human space begging for help. He offered to give humans entire star systems if they would just come back and fix the disasters that were spreading across the galaxy. Every message disappeared into the black silence that surrounded human territory. It was like throwing stones into a bottomless pit. Nothing came back. Not even an echo to show that anyone was listening. Some aliens began to whisper that humans had evolved beyond the need for any contact with other species. Others worried that humans were planning something terrible. The silence was more frightening than any threat could have been. At least when someone threatens you, they are still talking to you. But humans had become like ghosts, present, but unreachable. The most disturbing reports came from the border areas around human space. Automated defense systems had appeared around every human world, But these were not like any weapons the aliens had ever seen. Ships that got too close to human territory did not explode or get shot down. They simply vanished without any trace scout ships. From a dozen different species had tried to sneak into human space to spy on what humans were doing, but none of them ever came back. The aliens could not tell if the ships were being destroyed or captured or transported somewhere else. They just disappeared as completely as if they had never existed. Some brave alien pilots reported seeing strange effects around human worlds. Space itself seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. Stars appeared to be in the wrong positions and distances became meaningless. Ships that should have been able to reach human planets in hours found themselves flying in circles for days. The aliens realized that humans had not just withdrawn diplomatically, they had created some kind of barrier around their entire civilization that was beyond alien understanding. It was technology so advanced that it made everything else look like stone tools. Fear began to replace anger in the alien leaders. The Vorthak Prime Minister had stopped demanding human technology and started begging for forgiveness. The Draknari Empress offered to become a human colony if humans would just help stop the wars that were tearing the galaxy apart. But the begging and pleading had no more effect than the threats and demands had. Everything disappeared into the terrible silence that surrounded human space, like a wall made of emptiness itself. As the crisis deepened, alien societies began to collapse in ways no one had expected. The Crystalline Federation split into dozens of smaller groups, as different crystal cities could no longer cooperate without human mediators. The Aquatic Collective fractured as underwater. Cities were abandoned due to failing life support systems. Even the mighty Hive Collective was starting to break apart as different sections of the Hive mind disagreed about what to do without human guidance. Some parts of the Hive wanted to keep trying to steal resources from other species, while other parts wanted to focus on survival. The galaxy that had once been united under the Galactic Council was becoming a collection of desperate groups fighting over the scraps of a civilization that humans had been quietly holding together. The aliens were learning too late that they had not been partners in a galactic community. They had been children being cared for by adults who had finally decided to leave them on their own. 10 months after humanity disappeared from galactic civilization, a secret was about to be revealed that would completely change how every alien species understood their place in the universe. Research Director Haywan sat in a hidden laboratory, buried deep under the surface of Luna, watching alien communications with a mixture of amazement and sadness at how wrong the aliens had gotten everything. Haywan had access to classified human files that told the real story of humanity's relationship with the galaxy, and the truth was so shocking that even she had trouble believing it when she first learned about it. The aliens thought humans had withdrawn because they were angry or hurt, but the reality was much more profound than that. The truth was that humanity had never needed the Galactic Council at all. Human participation in galactic politics had been completely voluntary, a gift from a species that had already solved every major problem that the aliens were still struggling with. While the Council species were fighting over basic resources and primitive technology, humans had quietly developed abilities that made them nearly godlike by galactic standards. Field researcher Tae Ho worked from a secret observatory floating in deep space far from any alien worlds. His job was to monitor what was happening across the galaxy without being detected, and his reports painted a picture that would have terrified the aliens if they could have seen them. For decades, humans had been carefully managing galactic stability without any of the alien species realizing what was happening. They had prevented wars by making tiny adjustments to trade routes that changed which species had access to what resources. They had stopped famines by timing their technology releases to help struggling worlds just when help was needed. The wars that were now tearing the galaxy apart had been about to happen many times before, but humans had always stepped in with exactly the right intervention at exactly the right moment. Sometimes it was a new medical discovery that helped a plague-stricken species. Sometimes it was a trade agreement that gave aggressive species something better to do than fight. Humans had been like invisible gardeners tending a wild garden, keeping all the different plants healthy and preventing any one species from choking out the others. The aliens had thought they were making their own decisions and solving their own problems, but actually, humans had been guiding every major galactic event for generations. Project Director So Young reviewed files that showed the true scope of human intervention in alien affairs. The records went back almost a century and showed that humans had been systematically trying to help alien species develop their own advanced technologies and stable governments. The human approach had been incredibly patient and subtle. Instead of just giving aliens advanced technology, humans had tried to guide them toward discovering things for themselves. Human scientists would publish research that gave alien researchers just enough hints to make their own breakthroughs. Human diplomats would suggest solutions to problems that allowed alien leaders to take credit for wise decisions. But the constant demands for human technology and the threats made by council members had finally convinced human leaders that the alien species were not ready for true partnership. The aliens had shown that they saw humans as a resource, to be exploited rather than equals to be respected. Most shocking of all was the revelation of humanity's true defensive capabilities. Military engineer Chan Wu had designed systems that could protect Earth and all human colonies from any conceivable threat in the galaxy. The barrier around human space was not just advanced technology, it was a demonstration of power so subtle that the aliens had not even recognized it. As a defensive measure, ships that approached human borders were not being destroyed, they were being gently moved through folded space-time to safe locations millions of miles away. The aliens thought their ships were disappearing, but actually they were being carefully relocated by humans who did not want to hurt anyone, but also would not allow their privacy to be violated. The technology that made this possible was based on physics that alien science would not discover for thousands of years, if they ever discovered it at all. Humans had learned to manipulate space and time itself to create effects that seemed like magic to less advanced species. Even more impressive was the revelation that humans had been holding back their true capabilities for decades. The technology that aliens found so advanced was actually the simplest and most basic level of human science. The real human technology was so far beyond alien understanding that there were not even words in alien languages to describe what it could do. Chan Wu revealed in his classified reports that human defensive systems could protect the entire galaxy if necessary. They could stop wars by making weapons stop working. They could end famines by creating food from pure energy. They could cure diseases by rewriting the genetic code of entire species. But humans had chosen not to use these abilities because they believed other species should grow and develop on their own. The humans had been like parents watching their children play, seeing dangers the children could not see, and quietly removing those dangers without the children ever knowing how much help they were getting. But when the children started demanding that their parents give them everything and making threats when their demands were not met, the parents had decided it was time for the children to learn independence. Intelligence analyst Yan Su discovered that humanity had been running what they called the Uplift Project for over 200 years. The goal was to help younger species develop into mature civilizations that could eventually become true partners with humanity. But the project required that the species being helped show qualities like wisdom, cooperation, and respect for others. The alien species had failed this test completely. Instead of growing into wise and cooperative partners, they had become demanding and threatening. They had shown that they saw advanced technology as something they deserved, rather than something they needed to earn through their own development. The most profound revelation was that humanity's withdrawal was not permanent. It was educational. The species that learned to thrive independently to solve their own problems and to treat others with genuine respect rather than entitled demands would eventually find that humanity was still willing to be their partner, but it would be a partnership of equals, not the one-sided exploitation that the Galactic Council had been trying to establish. The aliens would have to prove that they had grown beyond their current level of selfishness and short-sighted thinking. As HFY reviewed the final classified files, she realized that humanity was conducting the largest and most complex social experiment in galactic history. They were teaching an entire galaxy, full of species, how to become truly civilized. The lesson was harsh but necessary, and the final exam was whether the aliens could learn to survive and thrive without human help. The age of human guidance was ending, but the age of potential partnership was just beginning. The question now was whether any alien species would be wise enough and mature enough to pass the test that humanity had set for them. One full year had passed since humanity stepped back from galactic civilization, and the galaxy had become a completely different place. The old Galactic Council station was now running on backup power that would fail completely within a few months. But some alien species had learned to adapt while others had collapsed entirely. On the dying station, Ambassador Hyunwoo materialized from nowhere, like a ghost appearing in a room full of frightened children. His arrival was so sudden and quiet that most of the alien delegates did not notice him at first. He had not used a spaceship or a teleporter or any technology the aliens could recognize. He had simply decided to be there, and he was the few aliens who saw him appear, felt their hearts stop with terror and hope at the same time. It had been a full year since any human had spoken to any alien, and now one of them was here standing calmly in the ruins of what had once been the center of galactic government. Hyunwoo looked around. The darkened hall where emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls, where alien delegates huddled in small groups arguing about resources and territories like animals fighting over scraps. His expression was neither angry nor sad, just curious, like a scientist observing the results of an experiment. Some species had risen to the challenge in ways that surprised everyone. The aquatic collective had learned to work with the tidal forces of their ocean worlds to create new forms of clean energy. Their underwater cities were now powered by the natural movement of their seas, and they had begun sharing this technology with other water-dwelling species. The desert nomads had embraced their wandering nature and developed incredible new technologies based on living in harmony with harsh environments. They had learned to pull water from the air using crystals that grew naturally on their worlds, and they had built cities that could pack up and move when resources became scarce. These species had taken humanity's withdrawal as a challenge to discover their own potential, instead of as a disaster that ended their comfortable lives. They had learned to solve problems by thinking creatively, instead of demanding that someone else fix things for them. But other species had not been so wise. The Vorthak Empire had broken apart into dozens of small groups that spent all their time fighting each other over the remaining scraps of human technology. Their once mighty bug armies had become bands of scavengers picking through the ruins of their own civilization. The Draknari snake people had become pirates and raiders attacking any species that still had resources they wanted. Their beautiful scaled ships now looked like floating junkyards held together with salvaged parts and desperation. Their proud warrior culture had become simple thuggery. Several smaller species had disappeared entirely. Some had fled to remote parts of the galaxy to hide from the chaos, while others had simply given up and allowed their civilizations to fade away like candles burning out in the dark. Intelligence analyst Yun Su had been monitoring these changes from her hidden post on Luna, and her reports showed that the galaxy was reorganizing itself into smaller regional groups instead of the unified system that humans had helped maintain. Some of these new alliances were based on cooperation and mutual aid, while others were just protection groups formed by scared species trying to survive. The most interesting development was that some of the more thoughtful alien species had begun to understand what humanity had actually been doing all along. They were starting to ask questions about why their technology had worked so well when humans were around and why everything had fallen apart so quickly after humans left. These species were beginning to implement real diplomatic reforms, focusing on helping each other instead of making demands and threats. They were learning to share resources fairly and to solve conflicts through discussion instead of violence. These aliens were finally starting to mature into the kind of civilizations that might eventually earn humanity's respect again. The Crystalline Federation had split into smaller groups, but instead of fighting each other, these crystal cities had formed partnerships based on what each group did best. Some focused on mining, while others specialized in art or science or manufacturing. They traded fairly with each other and helped smaller species that asked politely for assistance. A few aquatic colonies had begun reaching out to desert nomad tribes, offering to share water purification technology in exchange for help with solar energy systems. These species were learning that cooperation created more wealth and security than competition or conquest. Most importantly, these maturing species had stopped trying to steal or copy human technology. Instead, they were working to develop their own solutions to their problems using their own unique abilities and perspectives. They were finally learning to stand on their own instead of depending on human charity. Deep in human space, Director Hyun-woo monitored these developments with quiet satisfaction. From a facility that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, his office looked out on views of distant galaxies and parallel universes, but today he was focused on the small section of space where Earth's children were finally growing up. Humanity had never intended their withdrawal to be permanent. The isolation had been a necessary lesson, designed to teach the galaxy that partnership required mutual respect and shared responsibility. The species that learned to thrive independently while also learning to help others were showing that they might be ready for true friendship with humanity. Hyun-woo had been drafting new criteria for eventual re-contact with alien species. The requirements were simple but absolute. Any species that wanted to rejoin the galactic community would need to demonstrate that they could govern themselves wisely, solve their own problems creatively, and treat other species with genuine respect rather than selfish demands. The test was not about technology, or military power, or economic strength. It was about wisdom and maturity, and the ability to think beyond immediate wants to consider the long-term good of everyone. The species that passed this test would find that humanity was ready to be their partner in exploring the infinite mysteries of the universe. As Hyun-woo watched some species take their first tentative steps toward true civilization, he began planning for the day when contact could be restored. But it would be contact between equals, not the parent-child relationship that had existed before. The aliens would have to prove they were ready for the responsibilities that came with advanced technology and galactic citizenship. The age of human guidance was ending, but something better was beginning. The age of true galactic partnership was still possible, but only for those species wise enough and brave enough to earn it. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but only mature civilizations would be trusted to explore them safely. In the ruins of the old council station, the few remaining delegates looked up as Hyun-woo stepped forward to speak for the first time in a year. His words would determine the future of galactic civilization, and every being in the hall held their breath waiting to learn whether humanity would give them one more chance to prove they could be worthy partners in the great adventure of existence.